I think one of the biggest shifts has been how the conversation has changed from one that was about retail media being more of a supply-centric conversation, so where is this ad showing up, right? And is it the retailer supply that I'm serving on? To one of a data and intelligence conversation. So I think we've always known the power of retail media has been in the data and in the intelligence. It's just been challenging to apply that intelligence at scale. And the shift I think we've all been wanting for that started to happen this year is one around having the technology now to apply the retail data at scale. So it's almost less about retail media as, is it on-site versus off-site? And it's more about where in the holistic media plan can I apply that retailer's intelligence? Does that make sense?
Yes, and more of those retail media platforms are becoming full-fledged media operators in their own right.
Sure.
But from an advertiser's perspective, what does a best-in-class retail media platform look like?
I think it's different for every retailer. And I think maybe it took a little longer for the industry to recognize that than maybe we had hoped. But retail media is about playing to your strengths, right? So I think Amazon would probably rightfully scoff at being classified as retail media at this juncture because it almost seems a little bit reductive to everything that they have. But if we consider retail media just where a retailer's first-party data is being applied, you have someone like an Amazon and the enormity of their global footprint and their unique supply, right? And then we have, regional, mid and long tail grocers, and then we have specialty retailers and beauty, and all of these guys bring something specific and unique to the table. And to think that they should all craft, mirrored images of retail media networks to each other probably doesn't make much sense, right? So I think best in class is knowing what's your unique point of difference that you're bringing to the market. And then how do you operationalize that in a way that gives the advertiser the speed and the flexibility and the measurability that they demand at this point, right? So a little different for everyone. And now I think retailers are starting to recognize that it doesn't always mean having to dump a tremendous amount of capital into building an enormous infrastructure and hiring huge retail media teams, right? Not everyone needs that, and you can still be just as effective at putting your intelligence in the end advertiser's hands.
Mm-hmm. And, many people, at least in the first wave or two of the retail media explosion, would think retail media equals lower funnel, closer to the point of purchase. But over 2025, we have seen growing recognition that it can play an up funnel role also. How are you able to help advertisers connect those two signals?
I am so thrilled that now finally in 2025 going into 2026 that we've started to kind of put aside the conversation around these hard lines between what is considered brand building and what is considered performance. It took us a minute. I think we've all been again wanting for it. Retail media can drive brand and drive brand equity and drive salience, right, as much as any other form of media. Again, because it boils down to leveraging the intelligence and in some cases the unique supply. I think what we're able to do now, especially through the open intelligence for commerce proposition, is say, how can we enrich, fantastic creative strategies and think about media all the way up the funnel, broad reach tactics, right? CTV and television, and just apply that intelligence up there for a stronger, more measurable outcome, right? And that's really what that convergence of branding and performance is. We even had a conversation earlier today about what is, really lower funnel search placements, right? And a point was made around how, if you're on a retail website and you're searching, a non-branded keyword, but you're getting back this kind of takeover branded experience, like that's a brand salience play in and of itself, right? Yeah. So, and I think we've always kind of maybe known this inherently, but it's been really hard to execute technologically, and it's been even harder to measure. And so as the technology is caught up, I think this is finally the year where we can start to fully break down those walls.
And just as earlier you differentiated between retail media platforms, no two brands are alike. Are you seeing different categories use it in different ways? So for example, are non-endemic brands using retail media in a different way from CPGs? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the relationship with retail media is always going to be a little bit different for an endemic brand and a non-endemic brand, right? The endemics have a multi-dimensional relationship to think about, right? So they're inherently a sales partner and a trade partner first, right? Prior to kind of being a media partner, whereas the non-endemics don't have that kind of added dimension to the relationship. I think the non-endemic brands are starting to recognize that retail data is a gold mine when it comes to building predictive engines, right, for how people behave in general, helping understand what moves people, what trends are coming up, what lifetime value. And so we've seen a much higher adoption from non-endemic brands now in the retail media space, and I think we'll continue to.
Mm-hmm. And just lastly, as we go into 2026, there's a lot happening again in technology explosion.
Yeah.
We're seeing AI, connected TV, when it comes to retail media, even in-store technology, displays and so on. What do you think is most going to change retail media from a technology perspective in the next year?
I think what will change commerce media and retail media the most undoubtedly in 2026 is AI. And I think to say that anyone that says they have it completely figured out, right, is a liar. But there are a lot of really interesting things going on. I think one of the things that AI is doing is forcing kind of a reframe of commerce and marketing in general, because it's brought together nearly every marketing function at once to have to work in concert, right? For brands thinking about how they're showing up in a large language model, right, like a ChatGPT or a Perplexity or a DeepSeek, they now have to think about their content, their operations, their D2C properties, their visibility on retail networks, their paid activity, their owned activity, their earned activity, all at once to understand what the culmination of those things is that's adding up to a total discoverability or even a total search kind of proposition for their brand. So I think that's a total shift for commerce. I think the way retailers think about monetizing again, like their media networks, when traffic is moving to places like large language models, will invite another shift and another kind of change in conversation. And I think it's all very positive because at the end of the day, it's driving a better consumer experience, which is what makes these things sticky. But as consumers start to shift the way that they discover and they shop, we're going to have to kind of follow suit.
Do you expect the LLMs to light up as a new commerce opportunity for customers and advertisers? I think we've seen early experiments or integrations between OpenAI and Shopify.
Correct. Yeah. So to your point, I think it's already happening to some degree. I think there's always a bit of a chasm between us as, industry nerds talking about this every single day and where we think we're at and where we think we're going, and then the kind of rate of adoption and the everyday consumers' use and value of those technologies. But I do quickly think it is reshaping kind of everything, the whole journey end to end, and there really isn't a product category that isn't affected. We've had discussions around, fast-moving consumer goods and things like grocery, right? But instant checkout for a weekly grocery shop is just as relevant as, say, a high consideration, high price point category like, automotive, or something high consideration like baby, where there's a lot of research going into the pre-purchase, pre-shop part of the consumer journey. And so I think LLMs have a role to play in nearly all of that. And so I think we'll see a lot of that shift really starting to come more into the everyday for the consumer next year.